Welcome back to Benton Homestead Phase 2 Renovation. Our first video focused entirely on the bathtub restoration, and in today's video we're going to show you all the other little things that we've been working on. While Evan was working on the tub, I was keeping myself busy with my own projects, including painting these two rooms. So let's start off by going back and taking a look at that footage. My first step to prepare the bathroom walls for paint is to go through and fix these couple of damaged spots in the Shikui plaster. Shikui plaster has a lot of different top coats that you can put on. Some of them are soft and have paper mixed in, some of them have sparkles mixed in, and a few rooms of our house are just like this, and it seems to be made of sand. Taking these light fixtures off is the first opportunity to see what the original color of these walls were. I like that a lot better. This is the putty that I decided to use for filling in the damage of this wall before I paint over it. There were a lot of different options at the stores, different size and shape dispensers, and I decided to go with this little bag dispenser, which I've used before because I know that it's easier for my hands to squeeze this than any other style of putty dispenser. So that's just a personal choice. Let's see how it goes. All right, I've got the painting started here. I guess this is the big color reveal. Our first big challenge is that we attempted to remove this vanity so I can paint behind it, which is obviously the right thing to do. And that caused some major issues. So we knew we couldn't remove the bottom half, but the top half seemed like it would come off, and we got it halfway off and unscrewed from the wall, and then ran into some problems. It was also securely attached to the bottom in a way that we couldn't dismantle it without breaking it. Then we also had some challenges getting those screws back into the cement wall. But crisis averted, we did get it back into place, and now I'm just going to have to figure out how to paint around it and make it look like it was done the right way. My second unexpected surprise is that this paint is super watery, but it's really hard to work with, and I definitely would make a huge mess if I tried to use a paint roller, so it looks like it'll be hand paintbrushing both of these rooms. So I'm just going to do the best that I can. It's going to be slow moving. So I am far from a professional painter, but I have painted the inside of my own house multiple times. I've got a fair amount of painting experience. This is something completely new. So I mentioned earlier that the paint is super liquidy, and that was at the recommendation. We purchased this paint from our contractor specifically for painting on this kind of material. What I also didn't expect was just the way the wall absorbs so much paint. So this is one coat, and I wanted to see how it dried before making a determination. And you can see there's a lot of splotches and lines. It definitely needs a second coat. What I'm hoping will happen is that the wall absorbed a bunch of paint, so now when I go over on the second coat, it'll be more of a uniform color and end up looking nice. You see how it's just soaking that paint up? Where it stays dark, it's just absorbing almost everything. So I'm basically doing this whole wall this slow to make sure that I get a full coverage. Alright, starting day 3 here, it's clear to see which part has 2 coats and which part has 1 coat. I also had a silly idea that if I had any paint left over, I might paint this stained cement patch here. This is where the washer sits. So I'm going to start today by going around the upper trim, all the edges one more time by hand. This gets a much cleaner line than the painter's tape. I have a very strong dislike for painter's tape. Well, this is an example of don't try this at home, but this is the only way I can get up here close enough to hand paint the trim along the top of the wall. So I'm now done with 2 coats in this room, which is the laundry room. I got 1 coat done in the toilet room before I ran out of paint, so you can see a reminder of how streaky 1 coat is. But right now we are waiting on getting some more paint, so we're going to move on to a couple other little things. I've got some scratches in the floor to fix, some filters to replace. Old filter, new filter. Dirty air conditioning filters, clean filters. Got some gunk and old paint off these light switches. I'm taking this opportunity to clean all the things from the bathroom, just give them a nice deep clean before we move everything back in. And my last little project here will be to fix some scratches in the floor. Actually not bad. I'm impressed. So while we're in the middle of all this, we get a good reminder of why we're going to all this effort. We got a new 5-star review on Airbnb from one of our last guests, our new friend Jane in Canada. She says, "I want to say how flexible and helpful Danny was for me. She also has a great personality and I immediately felt at home with her and grateful I'd chosen to stay at her guest house. Although it is a big space for one person, I quickly made myself at home. I stayed for 2 nights, but wish it were more. Benton Guesthouse is a perfect location halfway along the Shimanami Kaido, with so many day trips possible from Ōmishima. The Akiya itself is just right. The tatami mats, futons, and low tables are authentic and comfortable, and there is a Western-style bedroom as well. The kitchen is a time warp, with more than everything you could need, including a heated table. Remember, it was January. I'd seen a few of their YouTubes before I booked, but I'm now hooked on them. I'm completely impressed by how hard Danny and Evan have worked, not only on the Airbnb, but also their farm work, beekeeping, and now also the second ryokan just around the corner where they live."
Better, huh?
And here we have the end result. What do y'all think of the color? We really did decide to go with all the different blues. It's sort of fun. It seems fitting based on other Japanese houses that we've seen from this era, so we just sort of decided to go with it. And now we have all the blues in the bathroom. If you look too closely, you will see that the paint is still a little bit streaky. I did have some trouble with it, as you saw in the video, and I did end up only doing 2 coats. But once we get some art up on the walls, I don't think you'll be able to notice it, and actually, I think it looks pretty great. If anything, I honestly just wish we'd done this sooner. It looks so much better than it did. Well, that gets us caught up to the present, and today we have a few more projects we're going to work on. This is a really quick little update, but I wanted to add a few notes around the house for guests with QR codes, so as they're walking around the house, they can go directly to the videos to see how we renovated that part of the house. This vintage kotatsu heating table still works perfectly well, but the edge of it has come unglued, so I'm just going to touch that up a little bit. Another thing that I've wanted to do for quite some time is to find a better solution for the cords in this room here. If you remember when we first set up our guest house, we designed this small 4-tatami room to be an office space, and that didn't work out for a couple of reasons. First, the desk was damaging the tatami. I wasn't able to find a good solution for that, so we ended up moving the desk to one of our wood floor rooms. But also because this is adjacent to one of the main sleeping rooms of the house, we found that guests seemed to want to use this room for additional sleeping space. So in response to that, we've decided to just keep this room empty so it can be a flexible use, additional space room. The only problem is that when we got the internet installed, this is where the cable box went. So now we have to find a solution for this cord running along the wall. So that doesn't look great, but it looks a little bit better, and I think it's a good temporary solution because I do have a little bit of rearranging planned in the future. It's probably a little bit difficult to explain on video, but when this door becomes our second toilet room, hopefully later this year, I plan to move this desk here into the doma, so it'll be easier for guest check-in. And then here where the desk is, I plan to put a record player. The only reason that I don't just move the desk over here right now is that it will also involve moving the modem and possibly moving some wires around. So I'm a little bit hesitant to do that until we're ready to make that change.
You may have heard some noise in the background of that last clip. Our contractor, Tsuruka-san, is busy turning this ugly duckling of a pile of rocks into a beautiful swan of a retaining wall.
This is another project that's pretty hard to explain in video, but we're going to be adding additional parking spots here. So we've been accumulating all these massive rocks, and our contractor is going to turn them into a nice, neat planter and retaining wall here up against the street. So the rest of this will be additional parking, because we need to ensure that guests can always park here at the guest house, in addition to anyone here in the future retro shop. Alright, hopping back into the bathroom here, Evan's going to do a little bit of tile repair for us. These two tiles here on the windowsill need replaced, and the other area is right here in the doorway. Obviously everyone sees this when they come into the bath and shower room, and we would just like this to look a lot better. This is the assortment of vintage tiles and pieces that we have to work with for the bathroom. You can see we've got a few different blues here. I'm not totally bothered about having it be the exact blue, so let's see what Evan figures out.
So it looks like what we have to work with are these cool corner pieces, as well as pretty much the right color of blue with just one rounded edge, which is what they used originally. Now, if I could get away with using this, that would save me some work, but since this is meant to go like on the edge of a countertop or something like that, at a 90-degree angle, it wouldn't really work. I don't think it would leave me with a gap here to fill. So, since we've got plenty of these, I think I'm going to end up cutting and just using that much of the tile.
It's hard to show on video, but the assortment of vintage tiles that we have, some of them have two rounded sides with a rounded corner. We don't want that for this part of the project. And some of them have one rounded edge. Fortunately, this whole row here of tiles have one rounded edge. You can see on the left-hand side, and they're also in the correct color. So Evan has a lot of tiles to work with. These are the only two tiles in the correct blue that don't have any rounded edges, which is exactly what we need to fix the windowsill. So upon taking these tiles off, what Evan has discovered is that there's a little bit of a failing concrete situation here on the door jamb. So it's not just a matter of taking the tiles off and putting new tiles on. Now we have to rebuild the structure that the tiles go on. It always seems like projects end up taking more time and being a little more complicated than initially planned, and more complicated than they would be if you were dealing with newer houses or new construction. But this is part of the process for saving something that would otherwise be lost to time.
So I cut a little form here from leftover wood for making beehives, and then this is my overkill giant block to keep it from moving around.
We are still waiting a few days for the bathtub to finish its curing process before we test it. But I just want to say thank you to those who made the suggestions of trying to find a rubber stopper for the bathtub. I don't know why we didn't think that those would be readily available. I guess the bathtub drain is a pretty small size, and most of the ones at the hardware store were for much larger tub drains, but we did manage to find this one that we hope will work. Evan's got a little craft project going on.
Well, they didn't have any pipe cover thingies without holes in them, so I found a beer can and made some little pogs to fill it in. Remember pogs?
It's always sad when a pipe gets capped off. Think of all the baths that were had. It's the end of an era.
I could not pass up this giant pink rotary payphone from a local secondhand shop. I had been admiring an identical big pink payphone at one of the local grocery stores, and it had some writing on it saying that it's for the island taxi, but I don't think it's for the current island taxi service. I think this is a throwback and it still just exists in that grocery store. So I was really happy to see one at a reasonable price. I think it's a super cute addition to our pink retro kitchen. Mush mush! Evan's concrete has dried overnight and it looks perfect. Right out the back door of our guest house, this is Evan's makeshift tile cutting workstation. Since we'd already done some tile work and this tool was found here in the garage, the only thing we've had to purchase for this tile project is this pink disc, which is a new sharp disc specifically for cutting down tile. Even these little bags of grout and cement we'd been saving from the first phase of the guest house renovation.
I'm just using electrical tape to mark my cuts because it's what I had on hand, and it gives something for the grinder to butt up against.
Ganbatte, Evie. Evan's got the tiles cemented into place. It's looking pretty good. All cleaned up and waiting for grout. Same goes for these ones up here on the windowsill. Getting everything put back together. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this video here because at this point we're just waiting for the tub to dry, the glue to dry, and the tile cement to dry. We'll finish a few things up tomorrow, but the rest of this is going to take a few more days. We do still have more planned for the Benton Guesthouse Phase 2 renovation, but that's going to be completely reliant upon whether or not we get the small business subsidy, and the work for that will be completed later in this year. I've mentioned it briefly a few times, and I'm probably going to go ahead and do a whole video just to talk through what it is that we hope to do with that. But for now, here it is the end of February, and we have achieved everything that we set out to do during the time that we closed the guest house down for a few weeks during our slow tourist time, and we're ready for our March 1st reopen.